Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo sadanto suchedoye alahadi samya samputoshi.
Namo sadanto sucetoye alahati samyang sambuddhase.
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered even in billions of eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Venerable Master, Dharma friends, 师父上人，各位师兄大家阿弥陀佛。Hello to everyone. Welcome to our sutra lecture today. My name is Heng Sure. Today is Sunday, March 20th, here in the Gold Coast of Queensland. It's Saturday, March 19th, back in California. You can adjust your time and space wherever you are. Welcome to our sutra lecture. This is the Flower Garland Sutras series on the 10 Stages chapter, the Shi Di Pin, and we are just about to finish the verses on the first stage. Excuse me. That's my requisite first sneeze. Today we're going to touch two of the verses and then jump directly into a special lecture on Guan Shi Yin Pusa, Guan Yin Bodhisattva. I'm aware, listening to podcasts and people's voices from around the world, that the amount of suffering in the world, the amount of misery and pain that people are experiencing now is intense, with the war, with the pandemic, which threatens to come at us again with another surge, and all of the disruption that has happened from a land war in the middle of Europe, such as, they say, the price of wheat is going to spike, and wheat will be unavailable because Ukraine is one of the major wheat exporters of the world, and the wheat that they grow goes to lots and lots of countries where folks simply don't have enough to eat already. Their wheat is used, goes to Africa, it goes to Asia, it goes many places, and saves the lives of hungry people. And this is planting time. This is when the fields should be prepared for next year's crop, and they can't. Farmers can't plant, so that food is simply not going to be available, which means, regardless of the outcome of the war, the fallout of the war is that there's going to be problems getting enough food into people's stomachs. So this is a time of real suffering. A lot of people are feeling frustrated because how can you help? What can we do to make a difference? And one of our best answers is to turn to Guan Yin Bodhisattva, who we call on at times like this. And it's not for sure that people know how. So I thought to devote a special lecture today to how to access Guan Yin Bodhisattva's compassion. And it's not the Avatamsaka, but the Lotus Sutra says, Nian Bi Guan Yin Li, recall the strength of Guan Yin Bodhisattva. So we're going to do that. We're going to call on the strength, going to practice some of those methods and talk about some of the other methods. So that's what I had in mind today. And if that's something that appeals to you, you're in the right place. Now, don't you move a dad burned inch, as they say in Vermont. So, okay. Now, we need to invoke, that's a hard one to translate, Vermont idioms, right? Don't you move a dad burned inch, they say. 丝毫都不要动，站住。So, yeah. You're in the right place. 得其所在，得其所在。Let's invoke spiritual presence to invite the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the Avatamsaka Assembly to draw near, to take part in our assembly, and to bless everyone. Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Hai Wei Fo Pu Sa Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Hai Wei Fo Pu Sa Namo Da Fang Guang Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Hai Wei Fo Pu Sa Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Hai Wei Fo Pu Sa Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Hai Wei Fo Pu Sa Namo Da Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Hai Wei Fo Pu Sa Namo Da Hua Yan Jing There's a banjo that's out of tune. Aha, give me just a moment so that our praises of the Buddha can be worthy of praises. Chengzan Rulai says, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, praise the thus come one. Ah, there's the G. That's it. Got it. Okay, let's listen. Ah, here we are. Now, one more piece of protocol, one more thing that we do before we begin the sutra lecture, and that's we acknowledge country. And we've actually added a sentence here. I've heard, I'm now a connoisseur. I've tuned my ear to listen to acknowledgement of country in all over Australia, wherever there's a public event that I attend. They begin pretty much every time now with an acknowledgement to country. Acknowledgement of country, and everybody does it differently, which is really wise of the people who created this convention here in Australia, which is just to say that we current people are only the modern residents here. There were people who lived here before us, and in the case of Australia, in the case of North America, the people who came after displaced the first peoples, the native peoples, the indigenous people. So I was listening to another, I was looking at a website actually. It was an Australian company, their commercial website, and they were selling tea tree oil. Very nice company. It's a family, small family, who are living on indigenous land, and they acknowledge it, and their products are created through indigenous wisdom. And I might add that the recent floods in northern New South Wales nearly wiped them out. The water just washed in and destroyed their product and their boxes. They had a whole new shipment of beautiful boxes, and all underwater. So anyway, so on their website, they added a sentence to the standard acknowledgement of country, which was, and to all First Nations people whose sovereignty was never ceded. Ceded means given, right? Means nobody asked them if they wanted to move aside and let all the new white people in, the current Australians, to take over their land. Nobody asked them. They never gave it over. Now, had they asked, the indigenous custom is to welcome people to country, to share. There's plenty of land, but it's proper, it's righteous, it's correct to first ask, not just come in and take over. So, with that in mind, the Kombumerri people of the Ugambe language group practice their spiritual connections to land and to all creation here in this location for thousands of years. Today, we acknowledge them as traditional custodians of the land. With gratitude that we who came later share this land today, with sorrow for the costs of that sharing, which was the displacement and in many cases destruction of the first peoples and their cultures. With hope that we can move to a place of justice and partnership together, we acknowledge their wisdom and their elders, past, present, and emerging, and to all First Nations peoples whose sovereignty was never ceded. All right. Back in California, where I am when I'm not in Australia, the people who, the First Nations folks, were the Olonis and the Pomos and the Miwoks, 3 tribes of people who lived along the bay. And the bay, the San Francisco Bay, was such a rich storehouse of everything that you needed to survive and to flourish, that the tribes did very well. There are 2 stories. One story is that they didn't learn the arts of war because life was so good. Why fight? You don't have to go to war when you got it all already. There are other histories that say that in fact they, of course, knew how to protect themselves and fought among themselves. So depending on whose story you listen to. In any case, after the white people came, starting first with the Spaniards who settled, the tribes, the Olonis in particular, were forgotten. They didn't even make it into the register of recognized tribes. So as part of an interfaith effort at the Interfaith Center at the Presidio, which is a wonderful interfaith group of the Bay Area that we were part of, as the Institute for World Religions. The Interfaith Center at the Presidio got to know the last remaining survivors of the Muwekwa Ohlone tribe, and they discovered that the National Registry of Tribes, the Bureau of Indian Affairs in America, didn't even know they were there. And because of the efforts of the Interfaith Center working to support the last members of the Ohlone tribe, right at the Presidio, right at the edge of America. It was a military base for years, then it was closed. Now the Muwekwa Ohlone people are now visible. That means they're available for benefits and education and all kinds of good things. So anyway, how important is it to acknowledge country? Very important. Here we are. This is our text today. We're going to do 2 verses. 此德百善美，其见百诸佛，震动百世界，光照恒一二，化百度众生，入于百法门，能知百界事，实现于百身。There we go. They then attain 100 samadhis. They come to see 100 Buddhas. They make 100 worlds tremble and quake, and they shine on that many worlds. They teach living beings of 100 worlds. They master 100 Dharma methods. They can know 100 eons matters and make 100 bodies appear. Lots of hundreds. This is the hallmark of the first stage, the Huan Xi Di, the first stage of happiness, that this bodhisattva at this point of his or her development can have these changes happen, things happen. They can, when they meditate, 100 samadhis appear. 100 Buddhas appear. 100 worlds shake and quake in 6 ways. And that many worlds receive the light of these bodhisattvas. So, boy, suddenly, imagine if you had your iPhone in movie mode and you were, of course, you want to make sure you focus it horizontally, not vertically, horizontally. And suddenly this bodhisattva starts entering samadhi, Buddhas appear, earthquakes happen, and lights shine. Go, wow, that's amazing. Is this a Pixar film? Is this animation? No, it's the actual transformations of the bodhisattva's body making these things happen. Furthermore, that stuff is outside, this is inside. They can teach living beings of 100 worlds. They have this virtue, this Dao De. When they speak, you want to listen. When they teach, you want to learn. What they say, what they suggest, you follow, because they've got this virtue. And they can master 100 Dharma methods, and that's our entry into today. That's what we're going to be talking about. 100 eons matters, 百世, 百劫世. The things that happened over 100 eons are clear to them, and 100 bodies appear, different according to who needs to be taught. Just like Guan Shi Yin Pusa, who can appear in all these different forms. So, how about that? What is this? Is this magic? Is this superstition? How come science doesn't tell us about this? Well, the first stage is nothing if not scientific. It's very step by step. The word is empirical. It's a pragmatic instruction book of how you cultivate to get to where 100 colors, 100 bodies come out of your own body. Can be done, can be done. And the most amazing thing is, it's not just bodhisattvas, some special heaven celestial being who can do this. You can do it. I can do it. If I cultivate according to the method, the empirical method, step by step by step. This is how it's done. All right, there we go. That's what I wanted to share with everybody. Now, we have only 3 verses of the sutra remaining before we're done completely with the first stage. And we have to decide, we still haven't made up our minds, what we're going to lecture on next. We'll be letting you know during this week. Now, so shifting gears. This is Guanyin Bodhisattva Week at City of 10,000 Buddhas. And this 是观音成道吗？还是生日？还是 I was going to check and I didn't. 圣诞. Okay. This is Guanyin Bodhisattva's birthday coming up Monday. And there are 3 holidays every year that in the Mahayana calendar we celebrate, focused on Guanyin. And Guanyin Bodhisattva's birthday, Guanyin Bodhisattva's leaving home, Guanyin Bodhisattva's realizing the way. Now, was there a figure who we know was born on that day, and what was her birthday, and what's her horoscope look like? And we don't ask those questions, because which body are we talking about? Guanyin Bodhisattva's got lots of bodies, but the calendar is organized in that way. The leaving home, the birthday, the leaving home, and the realizing the way. So this is the birthday here in March, And it goes by the lunar calendar, of course. So, the day that Guanyin Bodhisattva is born is a day that we remember to celebrate and cultivate Guanyin Bodhisattva's practices. And as I was thinking about how to, I not long ago, in fact this year, probably, was it January last year? I forget. Explained the Pu Manpin, the Universal Gateway, Universal Doorway chapter from the Lotus Sutra. I did it on Saturday mornings, my other lecture series. And we covered lots of details about Guanyin, got lots and lots of stories about the responses to the cultivation of Guanyin Bodhisattva. And I'm going to retell some of those stories today. And those of you who listen to my lectures on a regular basis have heard these stories, but there's a value in hearing stories more than once. You hear something different. If you've been cultivating along, you're at another depth now in your refinement of in removing the ignorance from our nature, chipping away at the darkness that covers. Because progress in cultivation is done in reverse. We make progress when we have less of something, which is less affliction, less darkness, less ignorance, less attachments, fewer attachments. So those old stories, heard again, if you're in a different place, sound new. You hear more, you make more connections to them. So that's why I feel like I can retell some of the familiar stories. And they're good ones. I have some good Guanyin response stories, personal stories that happened to me and people around me. So, of course, Guanyin Bodhisattva has been appearing and teaching and rescuing living beings for hundreds of years. And so there are stories, Guanyin Pusa Ling Gan Gu Shi, right? Guanyin Da Shi Ling Yan Ji, all these different books, collected stories of magical responses to Guanyin Bodhisattva's cultivation that fill a shelf. There's so many. Master Zhu Yun was a monk who came to Gold Mountain Monastery in 1976. Zhu Yun Fashi, I remember him because he was one of my certifiers when I took the precepts and became a full bhikshu. So Master Zhu Yun wrote a book about Nan Hai Pu To, how does it go? Nan Hai Pu To Ling Gan Ji. I forget the full title. But his stories are very wonderful. And he went to Putoshan. Maybe he came from Putoshan. I don't know where Master Zhu Yun came from. And he collected stories of Guanyin responses. And of course, Putoshan in the South China Sea, off of Ningbo, if you know where that is, in Zhejiang, Putoshan was known as Guanyin Bodhisattva's home, and for years. And then Master Hua said that Guanyin actually moved, Banjiala. She moved to the city of 10,000 Buddhas. But when Master Zhu Yun was there in the 20s and 30s, 1920s, 1930s, that's 100 years ago. We're now in the 20s of our century, aren't we? 21st century, 2020, 2022. 100 years ago, Master Zhu Yun listened at all the different monasteries and collected all the Guanyin response stories. So that was, for the 20th century, that was one of the best collections. But there are Guanyin stories that go way, way, way back. And when, traditionally, when a monk, when a Dharma master, a nun would be talking about Guanyin Bodhisattva, they would go to those old stories. They would dig out the Ling Yan Lu and the Chuan Qi Ji and all these different collections. So they're wonderful. And when you read those, not many have been translated. So it helps to read Chinese or Korean or Japanese cultures that have known Avalokiteshvara, Guanshi Pusa, Kanzeon Bosatsu, or Guanyin. But I've, in my almost 5 decades of being a monk, have collected a set of my own Guanyin Bodhisattva stories. So the stories I want to tell are contemporary, and my ears are very tuned to any story about Guanyin Bodhisattva, including songs. I've been gathering songs. We're aiming for a Guanyin Bodhisattva music CD. We don't say CDs anymore, nobody. Music album of Guanyin Bodhisattva songs. So we'll talk about that a little later. Anyway, so what I wanted to share today was how, in a time of lots of suffering, in a time of lots of misery and pain, in like March 20th, 2022, this time right now, how does Guanyin Bodhisattva's strength help us and help the world? Is there any, you could say, insider information that'll help us make use of Guanyin Bodhisattva's Da Bei Fa, methods of great compassion, that we can feel like by cultivating Guanyin Bodhisattva's dharmas, we're actually helping? So, first of all, let's say I'm talking to folks in Australia, let's say, or maybe you're in New Zealand, or maybe you're in Taiwan, maybe you're in China, maybe you're in Hong Kong or Singapore or Vietnam listening in. And you could even be in California or somewhere in the US or Canada or Latin America, Rio, Sao Paulo. Maybe you're in Europe, Norway, Sweden. We're not in a position from here to directly aid people suffering in a war zone. And yet our hearts are moved and touched, and the pain of witnessing this first internet war, the first war being discussed on social media every day. Something that happens this afternoon can be on our phones in an hour or on our computers. It hurts to watch and not be able to help. And so people say, yes, well, send money. Money is certainly helpful. I've been told that it's not as helpful to send stuff. Because why? Distributing it on the other end becomes a problem. Although with 3 million refugees streaming across the borders of Ukraine in 2 weeks, those folks do need things. So giving material is good. I'm going to suggest today that no matter whether we're sitting in Queensland, Australia, or St. Petersburg, Florida, or Detroit, Michigan, or Taipei, Taiwan, or Shenzhen, China. So let's say we're in Shenzhen and we're in quarantine. We're not only not able to directly help, we can't even leave our doors because COVID is raging in China right now. No matter where we are, there is something we can do that helps in a real way. And what is that? It's turning our hearts to great compassion and using the methods of Guanyin Bodhisattva, which are indeed a former Buddha's method, using these methods to purify our minds and the atmosphere around us. In one of the more, I guess you say, esoteric Dharma talks, Kai Shi, that Master Hua gave, is unforgettable talk. It was given during a Chan session, a Chanqi Kai Shi. Master Hua talked about how when you sit and meditate, and what he meant was using the Dharma to calm your mind. Of course, if you're doing Da Zuo Can Chan, that's meditating. Doing Zen meditation, that's directly. But it's equally true that you can use a method like reciting Guanyin's name, reciting Guanyin's mantra, bowing to Guanyin, any kind of cultivation that calms your mind and replaces false thinking, wangxiang, discursive thinking, with the name of Guanyin or stillness of samadhi or the mantra. By doing that, said Shifu, we are actually purifying the air. He said, cultivation in this way is very much like an air purifier, because it takes away, it actually transforms, kind of the way tree leaves transform carbon dioxide into oxygen. You know how through photosynthesis now the tree leaves take what we exhale and give back oxygen? It's like that, he said, as what cultivation does to polluted air. We are pollution transformation purifiers when we're cultivating, he said. And so the more people cultivate, the more we practice, particularly Chan, he said. But you know, the Great Compassion Mantra does the same. The more we do that, the more wholesome, livable, peaceful atmosphere we are exchanging and transforming. Now, as I say, that's pretty esoteric. You know, can I prove it? Can I show you double-blind surveys of polluted air and non-polluted air and meditators and non-meditators? No, I can't do that. But I do know it's true. And not only Shifu said that, but other spiritual teachers have said the same, that where there are communities of meditators and cultivators and practitioners, there's a qualitative difference in the air around them, in the atmosphere around them. And if you think about it, I mean, bring it down to practicality, to things we can see and appreciate. Where do wars come from? Wars come from people's minds. And even though thoughts have no shape, they have no weight, they have no form, they have no color, they've got no velocity, thoughts are real as the invisible signal that is bringing my voice to you through the inner tubes, the tubes of the internet, right? Where do those radio waves, where do Bluetooth waves, where do the broadband, wireless broadband internet, where do those waves, can't see them, can you? But they're certainly real, because if you're watching or listening, they're real. Maybe it came on a cable, but at some point it left the cable and invisibly landed on your phone or your computer. So if that's invisible but real, what about thoughts? Thoughts are invisible but real and exceedingly powerful. If we can find a way to change our thoughts, then we get a different broadcast. We have a different wavelength, and evil, harmful thoughts in that turning can be transformed. So I'm going to maintain, and I haven't heard anybody say this, because you don't hear a lot of Buddhist practitioner broadcasts, but I'm going to maintain that if we can keep Guanyin Bodhisattva's dharmas of great compassion rolling in our mind, we can actually affect the hateful thoughts that lead to warfare in other people's minds. Can't prove it, but in my heart, I believe it is true. So, how do we do that? If that is true, let's say I've got a story. Have you all, let's see here, before I get there, I'm going to get my order in shape here. What I proposed was reduction in hate, reduction in warlike thoughts can be a result of replacing those thoughts in my mind and then sending those thoughts out. That's a result, is a reduction in warlike thoughts, replaced by what? Normal thoughts or kind thoughts. It's not normal to wish death on babies in hospitals. or children, right? That's an abnormally cruel, harmful thought. So normally you would move to protect children. And a normal thought will take it. It doesn't have to be a compassionate thought. We'll take a normal thought, which is not a warlike thought. That's one result. As a practitioner, how does someone who has worked with Guanyin Bodhisattva's dharmas look at, what would you say, how does a practitioner use Guanyin dharmas to say from the inside what's different? Okay, if I decide that I also want to use Guanyin Bodhisattva's dharmas, practices, to make a better world, one thing I can notice is what the absence of obstacles. What was impossible somehow becomes possible. Something that wasn't working somehow works out. And not so much that Guanyin Bodhisattva appears in person to me. It's not necessarily, although it is definitely can happen, that a kind-hearted elderly woman in a white robe shows up. That certainly happened to Master Hua. Shifu had dreams about Guanyin Bodhisattva appearing as a kind-hearted woman wearing white clothing and carrying a basket and had a willow branch. You can see Guanyin. And in fact, Guanyin appears, as they say, in 32 transformations. That 32 different bodies, just like our Bodhisattva here in the 10 transferences, 10 stages. But not always. Sometimes it's the absence of trouble that by which a practitioner says, that's the response. Things work out, right? They say, 大灾难变小，小灾难变没有. Right? The big disasters become small. Small disasters disappear. Elder Mr. Hu from Shanghai, when the 10 years of troubles came to China, known as the Great Proletariat Culture Revolution, he was a curator at the Shanghai Museum. He was in charge, in fact, of the Buddhist and other religions collection. And the Shanghai Museum had a wonderful collection of Buddha images and such. And because Mr. Hu, was witness to lots of the museum's acquisitions on the side, he also used his own resources when he saw not the masterpiece work, but another wonderful image beside it, because images often come together. He would purchase it with his own resources, and so he had his own collection at home, because he was a Buddhist. He believed in Guanyin Bodhisattva. He was a practitioner. He recited Guanyin's name. He recited the Great Compassion Mantra, and bowed to Guanyin. And so the Cultural Revolution came along, and it was a time of great turmoil. And the Red Guards came to the museum and shut it and took the people in charge and put them in jail. Mr. Hu had 300 images of Guanyin, of the Buddha and Guanyin at home in his own collection, and he had no idea what happened to them, and he feared for the worst when he went to jail. So, as Mr. Hu told the story, he said, can you imagine? He said, at the time, you were not allowed to practice religion. It was considered superstition. And I always recited with beads. I always had nianzhu when I practiced reciting Guanyin's name or the Great Compassion Mantra. But if I had tried to sneak recitation beads into the jail cell, I would have been beaten, or maybe worse. And so he said, because there were lots of prisoners in there with me, political prisoners, he said they needed somebody to to take charge of some of the administration of the prisoners among ourselves. And because I was someone they knew, they put me in charge of taking the roll, knowing who was there, making sure everybody got a towel or a bar of soap. And he said, so as a result, I had keys. They gave me keys to this storeroom so I could distribute things. And he said, my key ring was one of these, he said. One of these. We call it a lucky rabbit's foot keychain, right? The cheap keychain that you get when you get did anybody ever have lucky rabbit's feet, which are not lucky for the rabbits, mind you, but these kind of keychains, right? So he said, my keys that they gave me to open the storeroom in the prison came on a keychain like this, the cheap old ball and stick keychain. He said, I used it for my recitation beads. By day, it was a keychain. By night, he said, I recited Guan Yin's name. And I recited, and I recited, and I recited. And he said, the Cultural Revolution passed, and we saw the whole thing through in the jail, in the prison. And then he said, one day, he said, they just said, go home. They spit me out. No announcement, no explanation. They said, go home. The door opened, and I was out in the street, free. It was over. And he said, I went home, and of course people had used my apartment for some sort of administrative something or other, but they had gone now. My apartment was empty, and of course all of my Buddha images were gone. And he said, I just figured, well, at least I have my own life. I wasn't beaten or killed. So he went to the museum, and the museum had been returned to the city, and they tried to get organized again. And as he came in the door, one of his old assistants, one of his subordinates, saw him and said, oh, Hu Lao Shi, Hu Lao Shi. He said, it's so good to see you. And they hugged, they hadn't seen each other for all these years. And he said, come with me. And he pulled his arm, took him into one of the storerooms at the back of the museum, opened it up, and there were all 300 Buddha images from his home. He said, his assistant said, we knew how much you loved your Guan Yin, and when we heard that you'd been arrested, we went to your home and saved your collection. Here they are, they're yours. So Master Hu donated them to the museum, and he immediately, he says, I thought of my keychain recitation beads that I used to recite Guan Yin's name. He said, there's a response. So that's one thing to think about is see how do you know there's a response? Is big disasters become small ones become little. And you look for the absence of trouble. When things, let's say you discover big disaster, that you've got a tumor, that something is growing inside you don't want there, and it's dangerous, and you don't like operations, but you've got to get surgery, according to one doctor, and somebody tells you, if you recite Guan Yin Bodhisattva's name with sincerity, then things will work out. And somehow it just clicks, and you think, can't hurt, I don't have any other way. And you start reciting Guan Yin Bodhisattva's name, Namo Guan Sri Yin Pusa, Namo Guan Yin Bodhisattva, you recite it in English. And sure enough, the doctor who you talk to somehow scares you. You don't feel good around that doctor. But then you hear from your husband or your wife or your sister or your brother that there's another doctor who they play golf with, and that doctor would be interested in giving you an opinion. Sure enough, you meet the doctor and you feel relief immediately. You just feel like this person's hands can take care of my tumor. And sure enough, the operation is a success, smooth, no issues. And 2 days later, they say, you're free to go. You can go home and recover. It'll take a while. And you just keep reciting Guanyin, and you know that Guanyin's response brought you the right physician and took you through that operation. So sometimes that kind of response, you didn't see Guanyin. Maybe Guanyin was the new doctor, I don't know. But certainly because of your connection with wholesome compassion, putting those thoughts in your mind, you were steered away from the wrong physician who you didn't have affinities with. That doctor might have been right for someone else, but not for you. And you met the correct doctor, and the big disaster became small and then disappeared. So things like that happen all the time. Why don't we hear about them? How many people do you know who recite Guanyin Bodhisattva's name? Yeah, try it. All right. Now, somebody says, yeah, okay, good, but how do we recite? And I'm going to, let's see here. Here's our, I'm going to slide down here. There we go. We go like this. We're going to go Namo Guan Shi Yin Bodhisattva. Try it in English. For you Chinese listeners who think, oh, this is all old stuff, we all know this. Well, try something different. Try it in English. Oh. And let me switch. Guanyin will hear you no matter what language you use. Have faith. But we might not know how to do it. There is a traditional melody. Traditional melody that some people say comes from the heavens, that the devas, this is how they chant when they chant, and some awakened person learned how to travel to the heavens and heard the devas chanting this way and brought it back. So, true or not, it's a nice melody and it works. It's the same melody we use for Amitabha, by the way. It's also the same melody that we use for reciting Earth Store Bodhisattva. Namo Di Zangwang Pusa. Let's try it. Try it in English. Although it's funny because why? Not a single word of Namo Guan Shi Yin Bodhisattva is English. It's all Chinese or Sanskrit. Namo Guan Shi Yin Bodhisattva. 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 Sound familiar? Namo Guan Shi Yin Bodhisattva. 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 How about traditional Chinese? Namo Guan Shi Yin Bu Sa. 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 Okay, and after that, you change it. Maybe you're walking a little faster, or maybe your thoughts are moving too fast to say Namo, too slow for Namo Guan Shi Yin. So you want to change it. Guan Yin Bodhisattva. Drop off the Namo and drop off the Shi. Guan Yin Bodhisattva, Guan Yin Bodhisattva, Guan Yin Bodhisattva, Guan Yin Bodhisattva. And then, as soon as you've done your reciting, here's the next important step for folks who want to make a difference in the world, and that's you dedicate the merit, transfer the merit. That's an important part. And reciting like that, Namo Guan Yin Bodhisattva, Guan Yin Bodhisattva, it's a catchy tune, it's upbeat, it's major scale, pentatonic, it's pretty, it's a nice sound, and it rolls and it rolls and it rolls. It just keeps turning. Da dee da da dee da 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 dee dum dum da dee da da dum. Also, as you recite that melody, it goes from da, top of the head, da da dee da 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 da, down, da da dee da da dum, down to the, you could say, the bottom of the spine. And da da dee da dee da 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 dee da 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 dum da da dum da 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 dee. It circles. And when you're reciting, you could say with a single mind, Yi Xin Nian, it activates all of the energy centers in the body in a wholesome way with a positive chant. And you are reciting the name of the greatly compassionate being who hears the cries of the world. And Guan Yin Bodhisattva's name has all the power of her vows behind it. Guan Yin Bodhisattva's vows say, all you have to do is Nian Mo Ming, Jian Mo Mian, right? See my face, recite my name, hear my name, recite it yourself, and I will extend one of my 1,000 hands, I will open one of my 1,000 eyes, I will listen with one of my 1,000 ears to your sound, to your needs, to what you need, and I will come and lend a hand. So that's a method. That's one way to make it work. Another way, so we mentioned that seeing an absence, noticing when something is less or gone entirely, is the way a practitioner appreciates a Guan Yin response. We're not necessarily looking for, a two-footed person coming to us with a kind face and helping us. That can happen. It has happened. But more likely, something in us changes. We lose some irritation. We lose some anger. Most importantly, we lose our fear. Guan Yin Bodhisattva is known as Shi Wu Wei Pusa, the Bodhisattva who bestows courage. She gives us confidence. And whereas before the idea of a surgery was terrifying, with Guan Yin's name constantly running through our system, we're not afraid. We believe that the outcome will be compassionate. So that's one way, appreciating the absence of trouble and affliction is a true response that comes from reciting Guanyin's name. There's another one, which is a practitioner who recites Guanyin's name or the mantra or bows to Guanyin or recites the sutra, all the different ways people can connect with the Da Bei Fa, the Great Compassion Dharmas. A practitioner is not so much hoping for a deal, making a deal with Guanyin. Guanyin, I'll recite if you come and help me. I'll give you names, you give me help, right? That's kind of a transactional way to approach. Instead, a practitioner says, when I'm filling my mind, Nian Bi Guanyin Li, when I remember, when I recall the strength of Guanyin Bodhisattva, I'm opening my heart to Guanyin and becoming like Guanyin Bodhisattva. I join her team. It's that I want to be like Guanyin Bodhisattva, that compassionate, that Tongti Dabe, embodying, incorporating, becoming one body with everything that happens, everything that humans can do, I am capable of, and yet the negative sides, the harmful sides, the selfish sides, the greedy sides, I weed out the same way that if I'm, I want to eat this banana and I peel it first. I don't eat the peel, the banana peel, that would not digest very well, it wouldn't taste good. I like what's inside the banana, so I select. Banana peel gets thrown away, but the banana fruit I eat. And the same way, in my mind, when negative dharmas that maybe have been part of my mind since I was a child, but now that I know and learn about great compassion, I can choose. I think, no, I'm not going to do that. I've been there and done that, and I don't like the results of being angry, being hateful, being critical, being cynical, being nasty, snapping at people. People back away from me. They don't want to be with me, and I sit here alone because I was generating all this nastiness. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to instead focus my mind on Namo Guanshi Pusa, Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva. Now, I want to join Guanyin's team, and that's how I do it, by picking up one of these methods. Another thing that I can suggest, if we want to be of benefit to the situation in Ukraine, as we transfer the merit, say, I dedicate all of the merit from reciting the mantras. How many mantras? Well, there is a traditional method of 108, reciting 108 Great Compassion mantras a day. And I have practiced that way. I did for years. I started on 3 Steps, 1 Bow. And I discovered that, oh boy, sometimes you wind up very late at night finishing that last 40 mantras because you only got, 80. You only got 60. And during the day you were doing other things. So if you make a vow that I'm going to recite 108 Great Compassion mantras a day, one, that means you need to memorize the mantra. And two, adjust it. If you make that vow, because 108 is the traditional number to do that method, that practice that our Bodhisattva in the 10 stages masters, 100 practices, right? So if you decide you're going to do it, really make sure that you have about 2.5 hours. I recited at a normal speed. Nammo hallada no dola ye ye, Nammo oli ye polu jedi shabola ye, like that. I didn't recite at jet speed. Nammo hallada no nammo. I think mantras need respect and dignity. They have a sound and a vibration, and I try to recite in a way that allows the mantra to settle. When I'm focusing on a mantra, it affects my breathing and my mind as well. So I want to recite in a way that keeps my breathing mellow So it takes me about 2.5 hours to do 108 mantras. And I had beads, and I had a little safety pin, snip, and I would recite and then move the pin forward, however many. Oh, I'm on the bus. I had time for 12 mantras. Move the pin forward. So now my beads have the pin, the safety pin, moved there. Remember where I am. Oh, now I'm waiting for friends to arrive for lunch. Another 10. Oh, move it forward. 23 mantras. So like that. And it would take me, if I recited straight without interruption, 2.5 hours. So I spread that time throughout the day, and I keep my recitation beads with me. Some people like electronic counters. Is there a counter app for the iPhone? I haven't seen one. No. Huh? Maybe we should invent one. We don't want people to spend more time on their phone. So beads are good. They're analog, and beads have a quality, and they start to shine after 2 years of using them. So I would keep my beads going and recite at a certain speed. If you know that you don't have a free 2.5 hours during the day that you can keep your beads moving, then make a vow to do 49 Great Compassion mantras. If you know that 49, that's about half of not quite half of 108, right? That's another good standard number. If you know that you don't have that much time, make a vow, 21 Great Compassion mantras. If you bow the Great Compassion repentance ceremony every day, it contains 21 Great Compassion mantras. You get 2 for 1. You bow the repentance and you recite 21 mantras. So adjust your time. Guanyin Bodhisattva is going to be delighted. I can't speak for Guanyin, but if I were in Guanyin's position and somebody said, I really want to practice your Dharma, but I don't have enough time given my responsibilities, so I'm going to do 21. I'd say, good for you. That's wonderful. Can you really do it? Do it. Yeah, go. And then transfer the merit. So, how do you do it? You adjust. You take on a vow and adjust it. Suit it to your actual conditions. If you vow to recite 108, but it's 11 p.m. every night and you've got a stack of mantras to go, you made a vow too big for your circumstances. Wait for another time and increase. Do more mantras, but suit your time, the available time you have in your busy life, and add that practice. It's a wonderful practice. 2 more things. Memorizing is really a powerful, powerful Dharma. And you want to get to where you can do it without looking at a printed page, definitely. Then it's portable, and it's really yours. When I first walked in the door of Gold Mountain Monastery, there was Bhikshu Hong Kong, Richard Josephson. And Hong Kong, he looks so tall. He's a tall guy. But I remember looking up at him, and here's this tall American monk. And what do you want? And I is this Gold Mountain Monastery? Is that what you're looking for? Yes, come in, he said. So I came in, and he toured me around. He became a really good friend, and he said, have you learned the Great Compassion Mantra? I said, what's the Great Compassion Mantra? He said, here, handed me a book, learn it. So it's like, okay, all right, I will. And he said, it's really good. You need this. It protects you, you protect it, So every time I came back to Gold Mountain, when I was just starting to poke around and see a Buddhist monastery in the middle of the Mission District of San Francisco, I would meet Bhikshu Hong Kong, and he would say, how's your mantra going? And I would recite, and he'd say, keep going, that's good progress. And with his encouragement, I did. I would drive my 1965 Volvo across the Bay Bridge and prop up the book, or I would write it out by hand on the steering wheel and recite as I drove, and memorize it in the car, memorize it, before I went to sleep. And within a number of months, I actually learned the Great Compassion Mantra, Nammo Hulla Dano Dula Ye. It has 21 sopohas in it. Putisat sopoha, mohasat sopoha. Svahas, success. So memorizing is really good. And memorizing has its own time. For those of you who think you might want to try it, you might investigate memorizing the Great Compassion Mantra or any mantra. Om Mani Padme Hum is easy, right? Om Mani Padme Hum, 6. That's easy. But the Great Compassion Mantra has 87 syllables, and it's 87 lines, multiple syllables. Takes about 90 seconds, I find, to recite with dignity, to recite with respect, where you respect the sounds and you give them time. Namo Hallada no Dolaye. If you can memorize it sometimes you get one phrase, and then sometimes you can't. No matter how hard you try, those phrases won't stick. And you recite, and it's just like, this is useless. I must be like, my mind is a block of granite. How come I can't remember? And then something happens, and you got it. And not only you got it, you have a chunk. You got 6 lines. And then, in a week, you get 10 more lines. And then you hit a wall, and you can't remember, and you can't. That's my experience, is memorizing Buddhist mantras, sacred sounds of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, is very psychoactive, you could say. It's working on the contents of your mind, my mind, which includes obstructions and afflictions and troubles and darkness. And the mantra goes in, and it's like a cleanser. It's like a power wash that's in there, in your consciousness, various consciousnesses, cleaning out a space for it so it can move in and become a clean, well-lighted place inside your mind. That's, I think, my experience of the mantras. I think they're just like that. They are powerful, and your mind has to be clean to hold them. The Shurangama mantra, even more so. Oh man, Shurangama mantra is much longer, and it took a lot of concentrated effort to get it all to stick. Because why? I believe it's because my mind wasn't clean enough. There wasn't enough room, lighted space for those sounds, those vibrations, power, the mantra to hold, to stick. But if you don't recite because your mind is not clean, it's never going to change. So you get in there and work on it. And you'll get a piece of the mantra, and then nothing happens for weeks. And then another piece, and slow down. But then, guess what? You can do it. You can recite, and you get the whole thing. And that feeling is quite wonderful. Now, for comparison, let's compare cleanliness of the mind. Master Xuanhua reports in his biography that someone handed him a book with the Great Compassion Mantra. He was a young man. He got on the train in his hometown, Dalianzhan, and he was heading for Harbin, maybe, I think. 30 minutes later, he got off the train and he had it all memorized. In one train ride, 30 minutes. He looked at it, got it. Yep. Namo Hallada no Dolaye. Oh man. So that's Sherpa. Extraordinary good roots and blessings and potential wisdom that he developed very quickly. So, nonetheless, we can't all be Sherpas, but we can become Sherpa's students and take his inspiration and bit by bit learn to recite the mantra from memory. Much more effective and powerful. So I was, I'll give you a second opinion. Ready? Traveling with Dharma friends to the city that used to be known as Rangoon, in the country that used to be known as Burma, and now it's Yangon, and it's Myanmar. And in Rangoon, Burma, there's this wonderful, wonderful Buddhist structure called the Dajinta, the Great Golden Pagoda. Oh, it is one of the wonders of the world. Incredible religious structure right in the center of Rangoon, and it's a tall, tall pagoda that's big, and you have to climb. You go around it, but you can climb up and inside. And there's a yangtai, balcony that goes around it at a certain level, and you go up higher and go up higher. So, Dajinta, Shwedagon, it's called Shwedagon, is the name in Burmese. So we were there bowing up on the Yangkai, the raised platform halfway up, doing 3 steps, 1 bow around the great golden pagoda. This is 1983. And so we had finished, and our hands and feet were dirty because our hands and face were dirty because there's lots and lots of pilgrims there every day, tourists and all. Because we were monks, we could get up to a place where only monks could go. And so we were sitting in the shade, kind of cooling down from all of the bowing that we'd been doing in the sun. And this very large Caucasian fellow wearing a Burmese precept sash, a Theravada precept sash, came walking up to us and said, "Hello, hello." He said, "You are Buddhists, no? We saw you bowing. Very wonderful, congratulations," he said. "My name is Bhikkhu so-and-so. I am the poet laureate of Lithuania," he said. What's going on? Poet laureate of Lithuania? What? He says, "Yes." He says, "I am a Buddhist monk, and I am a poet, and I salute you from America, no?" "Yes, we're from America." He says, "Very good. But," he said, "are you reciting the Great Compassion Mantra?" "Yes, we are." He said, "In what language?" He said, "Well, Chinese." He said, Wrong. No. Sanskrit only. You must recite Sanskrit. I am Theravada monk, but I recite Great Compassion Mantra for Guanyin Bodhisattva's compassion. Sanskrit, only effective." We're like, "Thank you for your opinion." And he said, "Blessings to you, good luck, every success." That was the last we saw of the Buddhist poet laureate of Lithuania. There he was. Oh, and he left an impression because he said only Sanskrit. Now, does the Great Compassion Mantra exist in Sanskrit? Yes, it does, of course. You can find it online. And it sounds a lot like what? There was a time, a few years ago, a decade ago maybe, when some Chinese musicians recited the Great Compassion Mantra in Tibetan. And that recording was so popular. I remember traveling in Taiwan, and ordinary public buses would play that mantra over their loudspeaker, over the PA in the bus. You just got on a bus, and here was Ammo Traya da 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 yantan da 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 di dum da di da yat da da dum di di da 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 di da dun dun dun. People remember that tune. It was the Great Compassion Mantra in Tibetan. And similar, it had a different number of verses, slightly different, but there it was, really popular, similar to Sanskrit, Dabejo. So I know it exists, but I beg to differ with our Dharma friend who accosted us on the monks-only level of Shwedagon, the great golden pagoda. Guanyin Bodhisattva hears our recitation in Chinese. Certainly does. And it is not the case that only one language works. If you can recite in Sanskrit, good for you, wonderful. But if you can recite in Chinese syllables, Namo Hula Dano Dola Ye, if you can recite in a Japanese reading of the Chinese syllables, I can't do it, but I know it exists, good for you. If you can recite in Tibetan, wonderful. Guanyin Bodhisattvas, 1,000 hands, 1,000 eyes, and 1,000 ears will look upon you with full attention and will say, Shanzai, Shanzai, you're one of my hands. You are one of my soldiers. You are Guanyin Bodhisattva's wholesome disciple. So the sounds are flexible, but they represent, the sounds are there to carry a deeper vibration that is potentially in every human heart, potentially can be called out of every living being. And if we recite that mantra, Guanyin Bodhisattva will hear it. And the effect is fully there. So I say that's a second opinion, and it's a funny story. And I still haven't learned it in Tibetan, in Sanskrit, sorry. I'm very happy with what I learned from Master Hsuan, and I don't think it's deficient in any part. It is the way, depending on what you heard, how you learned it. Now, one of my stories that people have heard before is one of the functions of the mantra is to calm and to bring peace and harmony where peace and harmony is missing. And when I was studying for my doctorate, I had to cross the UC Berkeley campus to get to the north side, where the Theological Union is, Graduate Theological Union, UC Berkeley's affiliated seminary. And that's, as people know, the University of California campus is a melting pot. It's a very, very active, chaotic, urban scene with Telegraph Avenue leading into Sproul Plaza. And everything that lives on Telegraph Avenue, you'd think it's a circus going on. And then there are all the students, and there's all the vendors with their street stalls, and there are all the soapbox preachers who are sending some of us to hell. There's the hate man who is preaching hate. There was the naked guy while I was there, the guy who walked to campus without clothes on. He was famous, the naked guy. He showed up in a class of mine. And there's all the clubs who are recruiting students, the social clubs, and there are marching bands and drummers, conga drummers. So Sproul Plaza and the UC Berkeley campus is a zoo. It's a circus, it's a zoo. It's everything in the world is there all at once, all crammed into these echoing stones. And I had to cross it to get to class from where I lived to where the campus was, my school. And the chances of getting through as a cultivating monastic in robes, getting to the other side with my mind still intact was a challenge, because everything was there to hook your eyes out, to hook your ears out, to hook your mind out, So what did I do? I had my same recitation beads, and I would start back in Burlingame, where I lived, down on the peninsula near the San Francisco airport. I would get on a city bus, drive up to the BART station in South San Francisco, and jump on the BART train, Daly City, and then go through San Francisco, and then across the bay and the tube with the BART train, and then arrive in Oakland, and then to Berkeley. Get out of the bus, get out of the BART station of Berkeley, walk up the hill. By the time, it took an hour and 45 minutes to go one way. And by the time I got to my class, I'd had the chance to recite almost half of my mantras for the day, 108. And I had to go through the campus to get to, as I say, to my classes. And I would just put my eyes on the ground in front of me and concentrate on the sounds of the mantra as I walked. Nammo hulla danno dola ye ye nammo uli ye polu jeri shabo la ye puti satopo ye moha satopo ye, like that. And I let the mantra adjust my steps and my heartbeat and my breathing. And it became the favorite part of my day. And I felt almost like I was just floating through all of the crowds of students with their flyers and their brownies at their table and their wish to recruit me for their picnic in Tilden Park and the bowling club and the Young Jews for Jesus and the amazing, amazing quantities of things trying to hook my senses out. But with the mantra in my heart, my heartbeat, breathing, footsteps, and mantra coordinated, I got to the other side of the campus And not only did I not feel like my energy had been sucked out or depleted, I actually felt like I was contributing to Sproul Plaza. I was, instead of being victimized or hurt by the environment, I was actually influencing the environment towards harmony and rhythm to those ancient sounds of Guanyin Bodhisattva's mantra. And it worked great. And I would move my beads when I got there, move my safety pin to the number of mantras. I kept track by holding my beads, and I knew how many mantras I had done. And one day, I got to the edge, to Euclid Avenue, the edge of the drive, the edge of campus. I had to cross over to get to Holy Hill, where the GTU, Graduate Theological, is. And there was a red light. So I'm at Euclid and Hearst, this T intersection, it's the north side of campus. And I'm waiting, and I'm still reciting, waiting for the light to change. And the light changes, and the whole students come this way, and students come this way. And this woman stops me, comes right in front of me, halfway through the intersection. She says, "Excuse me," she said, "I don't want to disturb you, but I just wanted to say thank you for what you're doing. I see you do this every day. Thank you for reminding us what's important," she said. And then she walked around me and crossed the street. And I'm like, "You're welcome." Namo Hula Dan, crossed over. And so somebody was noticing that although I was not advertising, I was just doing my mantra, reciting. And somebody was picking up that one person reciting a mantra can have an effect on a crosswalk, on an intersection, on an avenue, on a plaza, on a city, on a country, on the universe. Don't think that one person reciting a mantra is too small to matter. Furthermore, I wanted to add one more part, which is there's a dharma called Great Compassion Water, Dabe Shui. And at the moment, I'm not doing a Dabe Shui, Great Compassion Water practice, but I have in the past. And the method is you take a certain amount of drinking water, tap water, take a bottle of Evian or your local Kuangchen Shui, your local spring water, or tap water if you can, if it's drinkable, and put it in a bottle and put it on the altar where you recite a round. If it's at your home is ideal. I'm looking at a container of Great Compassion water right here in the Buddha Hall. It's across the way there with a cup dispenser right beside it. And while you recite not only the Great Compassion mantra, but if you're doing a Dabe Shui, Great Compassion Water Dharma practice, then it collects the energy of the recitation. If you have that water on the altar and you say, I'm letting it absorb all the practices, the morning chanting, the evening chanting, sutra lectures, everything, that's another practice, and it's just the same principle. But let's say you're doing Great Compassion Water. The mantras that you recite with that water on the altar has healing properties. And that sounds very mysterious, but in the sutra called the Tola Nijing, the Dharani Sutra of Great Compassion, it's about Guanyin Bodhisattva's more esoteric aspects of the energy in the world that is Guanyin Bodhisattva. It is said that when you recite over water, that water collects and holds the goodness of great compassion. And when you give that water to someone to drink, that it has the ability to heal illness or to bolster strength. If you're not particularly sick, it can keep you healthy. If you're ill, it can return you to health. And there are so many stories about Great Compassion Water's efficacy. I have friends now who whose moms are experiencing ill health of various kinds, just from old age and from worrying about their daughters and their sons. And the good daughter recites 108 great compassion mantras over the water, gives it to her mother to drink, and pain goes away. And courage returns. It's almost like it's liquid light, that the worries of a mother for her children and for the world, her depression as she drinks the great compassion water, you can almost see the darkness recede. So it's a wonderful practice, and it's very simple. You put some water on the altar, recite, give it to the person to drink. And making no claims, I don't want the FDA to come and investigate me, but there are many, many stories that I pass on that talk about how the power of great compassion water to infuse a person with the energy of the mantra that you recited with. So there you go. That's another one of Guanyin Bodhisattva's practices called Da Bei Fa Man, Great Compassion Dharmas. I've only touched the surface, actually, of all that I had to share, all the stories. So notice the absence of obstacles as the response. Don't look for a hand to come out of the sky and save you, but just when things work out, when big disasters become small and small ones disappear, that's a response. Number two, instead of waiting for Guanyin Bodhisattva to come and keep her end of the bargain, because I recited, you owe me now, not like that. Instead, say, I'm going to step inside great compassion. I want to protect Guanyin with my practice. That's how a practitioner does it. Turn it around. It's not that we hope to get a lot of good stuff from Guanyin. That will happen because it's built into the practices. But instead, I flip it over and I am reciting to keep Guanyin's dharmas alive in the world. That's different. Another one, last one before we end today. Gee, I have so much, maybe we could do another week, I don't know. Is where we look for Guanyin Bodhisattva is not up in the sky. Guanyin Bodhisattva is up in the sky. She's what are called celestial bodhisattvas, and there are many, many, many stories about Guanyin coming out of the sky to test cultivators who are proud or who are to encourage those who are timid, etc. But Guanyin's protection, according to the Pumenpin, the Universal Gateway chapter of the Lotus Sutra, is right here on the earth. Guanyin Bodhisattva is right next to us. And if we can bring her into our heart, she's right inside us. That's where you want to look, not, Guanyin, are you listening? It's not like that. It's Guanyin appears at the moment when we need her to rescue us from the troubles that we're in. All right, there we go. So, a special lecture today, how we can affect and help the efforts in a time of war and crisis, even though we're thousands of miles away, we breathe the same air and we walk on the same planet. So make your vibes, make your energy that of great compassion, transfer the merit, dedicate the merit to ending hateful, harmful, killing thoughts, and you have done something profound to alter the course of the war. Okay. Now, I noticed that Berkeley Monastery is online. Jin Chuan Shi, do you have something you want to share with us, or is that Jin Wei Shi today? Amitofo.
Okay, Amitofo. I'm here with Jin Wei Shi.
Hello, Amitabha.
Hi. Oh, you're both there. Great.
Yeah.
Amitofo. Would you like me to bring up the website? I can do that.
Sure. don't have too many new events. We have one that's coming up very soon, which is the Four Fearless Hearts, and quite a few people have been signing up. So if you're interested, March 26th to April 2nd. So next week, we will have this retreat on loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity for 1 week. So if you'd like to join, please do. It's self-paced, maybe 1 to 3 hours a day, and there's a lot of rich content. And a lot of it is the mutual learning of people's kind of honest sharing. So it's quite inspiring to be able to interact with people all around the world. Well, the next event there is actually Prayers for Ukraine. I think that event has happened, but if you go to RSVP, you can actually see the recording. And it was also a very inspiring event with many different religious leaders. If you haven't listened to James Odia's talk, there are recording or clips. There's a clips there, that link on top, Dharma Master, very top, clips.
Oh, clips.
Yeah, you can record the whole thing. You'll see there's a Carrie Newcomer singing Sanctuary, Nemo singing We Shall Overcome, James Odia in that upper right corner. And we shared a little bit too. Jing Weisher had his Polish friend share the work that they're doing, taking care of Ukrainian refugees. And so it was a very, you would say, heartful event. a lot of heart for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely important in current times to be able to hold the suffering and pain with compassion. And then other than that, we have our regular schedule. So Heng Sure's lectures on Saturday and Friday, Marty's lecture here. And then the Great Compassion Mantra Dedication of Merit is happening. Next one will be next Sunday in the morning. That will be happening. Okay. So if you wanted to sign up, as Heng Sure was just talking about the Great Compassion Mantra, you can join with many of your Dharma friends. And it's been going on since the COVID began. So for 2 years now, people have been reciting the mantra. And we often get about almost 250,000 mantras every month from the whole community.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, great. There's other stuff. Good. All right, thank you for that. Yeah, the Four Fearless Hearts pod is quite an event. All right, let's see here. It is now, I'm going to stop sharing. Here we go. And along with as I mentioned, along with the problems happening in Ukraine, in the center of Europe, COVID has not gone away. And for example, Hong Kong right now is suffering intense grief because of COVID. The countries around the world, like Australia, that for so many years was month after month after month, had almost no COVID cases here in Queensland in particular. Now Omicron has come, and it's devastating. Sydney is hit really hard, and China is under lockdown. Millions and millions of people are at home because of COVID again, and there's some sense that another wave could be brewing, a sub-variant of Omicron. Don't want to even think about that. So I think today, if we can transfer merit with Medicine Buddha's mantra, this is, again, a wonderful, powerful way, Buddhist way, to contribute to the well-being of the world. So this is a Sanskrit mantra. It's propagated by the Buddha of lapis lazuli light, the Buddha who just quells calamities and lengthens life, medicine master. So please make a wish. All the goodness that comes from sitting through sutra lecture in our tradition, we can give away with our minds. Send it out however you'd like to make a more peaceful world or a more healthy world. Vaidurya Prabharajaya Gataya Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Padyata Vaisaji Vaisaji Vaisadya Samukate Swaha Om Namo Bhagavate Vaisaja Guru Vaidurya Prabharajaya Vatagatāya Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Padyata Vaisaji Vaisaji Vaisadya Samukate Swaha Om Namo Bhagavate Vaisaja Guru Vaidurya Prabharajaya Vatagatāya Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Padyata Vaisaji Vaisaji Vaisadya Samukate Swaha. Here are Buddhas we can bow to, if you care to join me. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. Okay, that's going to do it for us for this week. See you all next week. Amitofo. Bye-bye, everybody.